Hey, welcome back to PewTube. By request, now we have a little bit about the M16. Today, I think what I want to focus on is not just general information about the M16, M4, AR15 platform, because there's so much of it out there. But I really want to, as in keeping with this channel, focus on information that's specific to using them for theater and film. Some of my pet peeves, some of the things you might need to think about if you are armoring in production. So, if you are using a classic old school M16A1, A2, there's really not a whole lot you got to do. Thankfully, the sight's built into this top handle, so if you've got one of these and you've got this front sight post, and you got these old school two-piece handguards, there's not a whole lot you have to do. Now, there's stuff you could do if you want to set these up and make them work right. Often you end up wanting to put a sling on them. These are set up for really easy, cheap webbing slings you can put on. It's great for just carrying it around. Sometimes you can use them to help brace stuff for aim. I will say if you have to fall with these, slings are a pain in the butt to fall with, so you might want to think about whether or not there's a quick release buckle or just another way that you can carry it where you can ditch the thing pretty easily if you have to fall, because even with something like this, these are the rubber and metal, what they call the rubber duck training rifles that the military would use to make people march with and stuff. No moving parts, great for background use on theater productions and things like that. But they still hurt to fall with. This is a hard rubber. Not all rubber is the same. I do have some soft foam ones as well that are made for doing falls with and stuff like that, or throwing at someone. But I wouldn't want to fall on top of this or have it fall on top of me. And slings can just get you all tangled up and stuff. So do be aware that while there are times when you want to sling, there might be times when you don't want to sling, or where just between takes you might piss off your continuity person a little bit, but find a way to take the sling off before you get shot so that you can fall in a way that's not going to get that caught up in your neck or your arm or something like that. Of course, the problem with the softer rubber is it does bend and deform. This would be one of those softer foam ones. You can see it's gotten a little wonky over time. Some of these parts are a little messed up. But, it happens. And generally when you want to use these is when you're flying through the air anyway, or swinging it at somebody. Not really going to show at that point anyway once it's in motion, so you can still get away with something like that. And these do have wires inside to help, so you can sometimes kind of bend back a little bit as you need to for your shot. The M16A1, you have the triangular handguard, and you didn't have the little shell deflector here. So if you're doing something that's set in early Vietnam, that would be ideal. I used to have some resin ones. It was nice because they were lightweight for shipping, but they chipped really easily, and you could see the kind of the white through when they chipped, so I got rid of those. But for the most part, these are going to do you just fine. Most people won't know the difference, and this does have that classic look. At the moment, this is the only M16A1 that I have, and it's a variant that has that M203 grenade launcher underneath. You can see it has the A1 style flash hider as well. So this is a slightly different look. This would be Vietnam War, or also, of course, Scarface, say hello to my little friend. This is my little friend right here. But again, in that rubber duck training rifle sense where it's got mix of metal and hard rubber parts. You'll notice it does not have the shell deflector up front here. It does have the smaller 10-round mag, which was standard back then. This is, M16A1 with 40mm M203 grenade launcher, but they had a different handguard they used in the front when they were attaching those. You do have some options for accessorization of this. You can get these rubber and plastic airsoft bayonets. They're really cheaply made. They fall apart pretty easily. But if you wanted to stick one of these on and have that be a part of your look, they can't actually clip on fairly well and give you a fake bayonet for your rifle. So if you do have a top carry handle with a notch carved out, which the solid rubber ones tend to not, and this little hole in the top, actually looks like I put the hole in the top of this one, you can mount these old style scopes that were designed to go straight onto the carry handle. I'm not going to bother bolting it on right now, but you get the idea. You can actually mount straight into that. And that can give you a little bit of magnification and some crosshairs in a way that you don't have with the straight up iron sights. Another option is to use something like this that just drops in and gives you an extension to that carry handle, but also adds a rail. Oh, and this is where you can tell that this one is not mil-spec because it doesn't actually fit. You can try it on a different one. You get the idea. So this one, this worked on my MGC, but not apparently on this one. Anyway, this particular model is a model gun, so this uses reusable brass casings into which you disassemble it, and there's a little assembly in there that you can fit a 7mm cap into. These are nice because they have full trademarks. These were really popular in the 80s when they were doing like the A-Team and stuff like that. Full trademarks, they function exactly like the real thing. The problems, one is just that they tend to be kind of fragile, and they're all getting old, so they're all falling apart. I had one where the barrel actually I discovered broke during the last move. But the other part with the problem with them functioning like the real thing, but with only the power of a 7mm cap instead of a full 223 or 5.56 round, is they jam a lot. So if you use these, not only will you be having to really carefully hunt these down and scrub out the shell casings and get some silicone oil in those and all that, but you'll also have to be dealing with a whole bunch of jams and misfires, especially if you're doing a lot of automatic firing and things like that. But mount like that on top, you can stick your standard scope on and attach to the Picatinny rail there. Now everything I just said about setup also applies to your classic M4 or AR15. It's really just a shorter kind of carbine proportioned version of the AR15 or the M16. Now one difference is they introduced these folding stocks with this. So if you're getting one that's molded rubber, sometimes you'll get one that has the stock all the way retracted. So it's shorter. These are nice for transport and shipping. They take up less room. But once you start using it, you end up with this really crunched up, small kind of feel that may or may not be what you want. You can't really fully extend. You may not have as much openness to camera or to audience as you would if you have an extended stock. Gives you a little bit more just visual space here, a little bit more expanded, larger body posture, which can read as a little more higher status or aggressive. While tactical training does generally want you to have a more compact package, this doesn't look like a fight so much as this does when you think about our film fighting positions. Now the other big difference is that you'll start to see, and this one has a detachable one molded in with the quick release knobs, you'll start to see that they've made it standard now to do what they call a flat top receiver, which does not have that top carry handle. And with that means it also has no rear sight. They've also started to make standard these rails up front. You can see this one I've even screwed a section of Picatinny rail to the rubber training duck, just because this has become so expected. This is part of the look of the modern M4, is that you start slapping stuff on it. And these are just random ones I pulled off the rack here, but a quad rail is now fairly standard, or M-lock or key mod. Quad rail gives you probably the easiest ability to just slap things on there, because this is a standardized now rail system. I've got a couple different kinds of rail covers on here just to make it a little more comfortable for the hand or add a little variety. This one I was trying to, as I recall, I was trying to match this to a firing version. So slapping this stuff on helped to make them look more similar and helped you notice a little less some of the other differences between the rubber and the firing one. So we've got the solid style rail cover, the ladder style rail cover, a Magpul angled forward grip here. Now there's a couple different kinds of grip. I'll come back to sights in a minute, but let's talk about grips. It really just has to do with your shooting position. Some people like a standard rifle style. You'll see some people holding the forearm like this. Some people like to actually hold the mag well. This can cause jams. If you actually start holding the magazine, you can get little things that go over this. They'll give you a little bit more of a grip. If you're just pinching the mag well, you're probably fine. But if you like this position, you can slap a forward grip on there that'll give you that same position in a little bit more extended way and be less likely to cause jams. Plus you can mount switches and things on that for your tack lights and whatnot. And you can also attach bipods. There's even combination grips. This one is at least colloquially known as the Gripod. You can pop out the either one. I'll be honest, bipods and Gripod things like this can actually be kind of handy sometimes when you need to just be able to set the prop down somewhere and not have it flop over and sit in the mud. Yeah, I don't know about it in actual usage. I don't know. Probably more useful in a shooting range where you have a bench than in most of the places where you're going to be seeing combat. Modern attachments have also included things like these little barrier stops, which you can jam up against a window ledge or something like that if you're shooting from cover, maybe at a 3-gun competition or something like that. A lot of this equipment is more and more geared towards sporting events like that. Now you do have to be careful sometimes and think about the base that this is anchored onto. So for example, these are shell ejecting cap firing airsofts that are electric based. It was an interesting little thing. They were briefly available and then they went away. You know, it's all right. You get a little bit of a weird motor noise. They have their use. But anyway, I was rigging some of these up for Clutch, a movie that I did with Jay Rowlands. And we were doing a DEA raid scene, and so I had a bunch of these I was rigging up. And he had some buddies of his who were going to be actors in that as DEA agents along with myself. And a number of them had military experience. In fact, sadly, one of them passed away, I think within a month or two of the shooting of that, when he went back to, I believe it was Afghanistan, and was killed in action there. So these guys had real military experience. And one of the things that you want with this grip is to be able to really anchor things in your shoulder to mitigate the recoil. You don't want to have any space there so that it, you know, jerks around when it fires. You want to be able to really push that up. And these are honestly kind of cheap plastic toys. So I forget which one. It might be why this one has this buttstock actually, because they came with a cheap version of the telescoping stock. You know, we had an actor who was pulling in enough on this front grip that he actually broke the plastic of the prop. So you do have to be aware that sometimes if you stick a lever on something that's not very well reinforced, it could break. So this is an angled foregrip. There's a couple of reasons for this. Some people like the hand position that it gives you. But also as we start getting what are legally pistol AR15 variants, this became a big thing recently when it was kind of a novelty before. And they had these, what they called forearm braces, where you could kind of strap it onto your forearm to fire one-handed more easily. Barrel length. When it gets shorter than a certain amount, if it's still a rifle, it becomes technically a short-barreled rifle in the US, an SBR, which requires a tax stamp and additional clearance. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Special permission kind of stuff. But if it's a pistol, it can have a much shorter barrel. So people's workaround for that was to make one that's basically the same as a rifle, but a short-barreled rifle with an even shorter barrel, and this pistol brace instead of a rear stock. And for a while when it first came out, the ATF ruling was that's fine as long as you don't actually try and use your pistol brace the way that you would a rifle stock. And then a couple years ago they changed that and said, you know what, we don't really care how you use it. Everybody's going to do it anyway. It's fine. It's still a pistol, even if you use it that way, as long as it's designed to be used as a pistol brace. And so then it basically just made it a slightly less ergonomic rifle buttstock. But other laws about the handguns, if it's a handgun, if it's a pistol, you're not allowed to put a vertical forward grip on it, but you can put these angled foregrips on it. So that's one reason why these angled foregrips became so popular. Some of it also has to do with trends in style, this sort of C-clamp style grip here, where you're coming over the top. You can't really do that with a vertical foregrip. So that's one thing. But it's also because you can legally put these on a pistol AR-15 variant, whereas you can't legally put these on a rifle. Also another variation on the angled foregrip. You can see this one's a little more ergonomic, and we've also added this thumb piece here. So that can give you a nice, standard, solid grip there. Actually, I really like this one. This is on an airsoft gas blowback. But these are pretty nice grips to have, and it's really easy if you have this quad rail setup to slap those on there. In this case, we've got sort of a Magpul style short vertical foregrip. Could be held this way, could be held this way. I'm actually kind of a fan of this. You can see I got another little thumb piece on this one, just to be able to really anchor that. It's also nice sometimes just to give you another way to pick up and hold the gun, especially now that we don't have those carry top handles anymore. You can see this one actually has a folding foregrip, which can potentially give you sort of the best of both worlds. You can have that vertical grip if you want, which gives you more of that traditional sort of fighting fisticuffs kind of stance. You can also still choke up on these, but if you wanted to fold it down, make it a little more compact, less likely to catch on things, you can also do that. You'll notice this one also has a rear sight. One of the things that made the M16 innovative was that the bore and the barrel was all lined up with the shoulder. And what that does is it means that the recoil goes more into your shoulder instead of giving you muzzle flip. But the problem is that means the sights actually have to be elevated because your eyes aren't in your shoulder, which is why you have this post here, why you have that handle with the sight on top, right? And why you tend to see risers on a lot of scopes. It can occasionally cause problems if you think that you're firing over cover because your sights are lined up over the cover, but you might actually be firing into the windowsill or whatever. So just something you got to be aware of. But you know, these things attach to the standard rail fairly easily. So the good news is you can put these on your solid rubber ones, your airsoft ones, swap them around fairly easily. And because it's just for acting, we don't even need to have them sighted in. But it is one of my pet peeves when I see somebody using one of these with no rear sight at all. There's no way you could aim that thing. So with no optics and no rear sight, it really makes no sense. So if you get one of these bare flat tops, you got to put something on it. Slings now, we also have a variety of options for that. We got 2-point slings, 3-point slings. This is one popular option, the single-point sling. Now the nice thing is that these line it up right along your center line, so it's fairly easy to control the weapon here. It's convenient. It's easy to lift it up. What it's not good for is running, because if I start running, this is going to start slapping me in the junk pretty quick. So think about what you want your sling to do and find a way to mount it, because they all kind of have their different uses. There are also some that can be adapted in different ways. Now another option with slings is you can have these what they call quick detach. So this would be an example of a rear stock that has some quick detach mounts built into it. So you can snap that in, and that will hold the weight. This particular version, so it can be a 1-point sling or it can be a 2-point sling. If I were actually going to use this as a 2-point sling, I'd get another mount up front, which actually I probably will at some point for this one, so that I could actually have a better anchor there. But just another example of possible sling mounts, and you can get Picatinny or Keymod or M-Lock attachments that will turn it into any kind of a sling mount, whether it's just a standard clip or a quick detach. You notice this still has the sling mount. Not all of them do up here though. Not all have a front sight post anymore, since most are assuming you'll slap different optics on it. It's also pretty standard to put a tactical light on one of these, sometimes laser mounts, other things as well. But that's what these rails are for, really. You'll also notice that the 30-round magazine is now considered standard. Those 10-round mags are really only for places where you're legally limited on magazine capacity, for the most part. There's also a wide variety of stocks. You start to see different styles of rear stocks, because these are really easy to swap out. This was an electric airsoft gun, still has a wire in there. So some of that's just going to be an aesthetic thing of how customized you want this to look. Do you want the more mil-spec stock, or do you want something a little more custom? Some of them can also store batteries and things in the stock there. Some have sling mounts built into the stock, some don't. So you got more options there. Also, this is an aftermarket grip. But you know, more and more people are customizing these things. Even the military, everybody's got a slightly different setup now, because you've got these rails, you've got your own choice of optics, your choice of sling setup. It's not the same thing as it used to be, where they're all the same. Now, if you do have electronic optics, make sure you've got them the right way. Some people tend to put these EOTech style sights on backwards for some reason. I'm not sure why. This is a fake one, because the real ones cost $1,000, and this one cost like $20 or something from China. It's plastic. But yes, you can leave these on with the other sights. A lot of them are made to co-witness, meaning that if for some reason my scope dies, I can still see my front and rear sight through there. Or if I've got my scope on, I'll just see that red dot lining up with my front and rear sight anyway. But these are really popular. These are not, these have no magnification at all. So these are not sniper scopes. Just be aware in terms of what your character is using it for. Sometimes you can get little flip to the side magnifiers that'll line up with it. That'll turn it into a 3-time scope or something like that. They can then flip to the side for what we call, close quarters battle, CQB, where you just want to be able to react to somebody who's, just in the next room over or down the hallway. So again, you have options. But this is a really popular style of scope, especially with law enforcement or anybody who's influenced by that. These sort of ACOG style scopes are another popular choice, especially with military type setups. This would be another sort of red dot tactical type scope. And some of these will also have little mounts for a little micro red dot up top or things like that. And another popular style of red dot scope would be these kinds of things, often with a little cantilevered mount here. And then another option, especially once we get into having optics, for iron sights, is to have some sort of backup sights. And these would be things that can maybe pop up as needed. The idea being that most of the time you'll be using this, but if the battery dies, if catches a bit of shrapnel and the glass breaks, something like that, you've got sort of a backup plan, and you can switch off to your backup sights should you need it. Here's another style of backup sights. In this case, these just flip up. So simple metal backup sights. But just having it on here makes me take this a little more seriously as a setup, even when you slap an optic on it. Another option is to get angled ones. Sometimes you can get them that's angled at a 45 degree, so that if something happens with that, you just rotate canty rifle 45 degrees, and you'll have backup sights there. That can be kind of fun for actors because it gives them a different position, gives you a playable action. So this is a variable power scope on this one. That's a fairly common setup. I think this one is a 2 to 9, 2 to 7, 2 to 7. Yes, this is a 2 to 7 power scope that can light up or not. But then on top of that, because this platform is often used for close quarter stuff as well, I've got a little micro red dot. So, and this is also something that's a fairly common thing you see with these AR pattern rifles. So that if I've got something where I need a little more precision shooting, I'll be using this. I'll be using the crosshairs in there. If I suddenly need something where I need a little more peripheral awareness, I need more sense of what's right in front of me, then I can just look up a little bit higher. And I've got this little red or green dot tactical scope up here as well. Let me switch that to red. It'll show up a little bit better, I think. Oh, is that just green? Yeah, this one's just green, which guess what? Isn't going to work because I've got a green screen background. So this is another thing perhaps to consider as you choose red dot versus green dot. If you're using a green screen, green won't show up. And that's also true of lasers. Some people like to stick lasers on these. It can be great if you've got a smoke machine running, just to get that effect of not just the tactical light, but also the laser going around. Both red and green are fairly common right now. But again, if you're using a green screen, green laser may not be your best choice. But they do have a nice kind of more modern look to them right now. Now, often these lights will have a remote pressure switch, which can be kind of nice. You line that along the forearm so that you can grab it fairly easily. The lights sometimes will have just an on-off. Sometimes they'll have a continuous off. Sometimes you have to hold the button. Sometimes they have a strobe mode. I think this one cycles through. Yeah, that can get pretty obnoxious pretty quick, which I guess is the point. This one's got a slightly offset Picatinny rail mount, but you can get key mod mounts, things like that as well. They come in various powers, various colors. You can get them in sort of a greenish color that's supposed to not ruin your night vision as much. Often they use these CR123 batteries, so you go through a lot of these. The laser pointers use those little small button batteries. This also, you'll notice, has a different kind of forearm guard. This is still the drop-in, so this is a really easy thing to replace those standard military two-piece ones with. This is a Magpul style, and this has, you'll notice how it has these little grooves here. And this is a relatively new system that is just now becoming standard. There were kind of two new ways of attaching things people were trying to replace the quad rail, because the rail is great, but it's a little extra weight, and it's not the best grip, which is why we have those rail covers. So some people wanted an alternative, and the two main ones that came out were M-LOK or key mod. And M-LOK has just recently been adopted by the military, so it's probably going to become the standard, which means key mod's probably going to be like the Betamax of this at some point. But basically it's another way to bolt things in. And it's M-LOK started with these Magpul grips here. And you can get rail panels that are attached to this, or you can get things that will direct mount to the M-LOK. This is a modern free float aluminum one. So you can see again, it's just these kind of oval cutouts. And so the M-LOK, basically just a little T-nut goes through there, turn it around, tighten it. And that gives you yet another way to attach a grip. You might also sometimes see foregrips like this that are just straight up civilian aftermarket. They're designed more for precision and ergonomics than necessarily any kind of function or attaching anything to it. This particular prop case we're wondering is a .43 caliber shell ejecting paintball. So they have these little cylinders, .43 caliber tube sections basically that it'll spit out, sort of like casings. They don't really look like 223 casings, but you know, it's sturdier than most of your airsoft, makes a decent amount of sound, uses CO2, and it's another option. These are just these little pull tabs. Can make it a little easier sometimes if you need to pull a magazine out of the pouch. But as far as I'm concerned, it's just a nice, easy slap-on accessory that makes this look a little bit more lived in, a little more customized. And you can put them on any kind of magazine, airsoft, whatever, they just stretch over. Trigger guards. A lot of people like these expanded trigger guards because it lets you use it with gloves. That may or may not be an issue for your production, but just be aware of that. These things really, they're referred to sometimes as like Barbie dolls for men. Not that men can't play with Barbies, but you know, the idea that there's all these accessories that people slap onto it. You dress them up in all sorts of different ways. You can get custom charging handles, you can get gas port covers with various messages and things on them. You can get all sorts of different receivers now, different grip, different stock, different kinds of magazines. This one's got the little window. All the stuff you can slap onto these front guards. You can get different kinds of muzzle brakes or flash suppressors or things like that. As well as actual sound suppressors you can get if you want to pay for the tax stamp. Airsoft fake suppressors are easy to get, So that's certainly an easy option if you want to put a fake suppressor on your airsoft gun. I am a fan of these quick detach things just because transporting them, I like to take the optics off. They get a little beat up sometimes. And so if I'm shipping them, if I'm taking them to set, it can be nice to be able to take this stuff off and slap it back on. And again, because we're doing it for fake, I don't have to worry about it holding at 0 or anything like that. If it gets a little off, it doesn't really matter to me. So what does all of this mean to you when you show up on set or as you're planning out your shoot? A couple things. First of all, it's not as simple as it used to be. There's a lot you can do for basically set dressing for your prop. You know, do you want to have a mag coupler and an extra mag there with some dummy rounds that would have to show at the top? Do you want to have lights, lasers, night vision stuff? Do you want to have a magnified scope? Do you want to have an up-close scope? Do you want to be able to transition? Do you need backup sights? Do you want a carry handle? What kind of a sling do you want? All these things you kind of have to ask yourself if you want to do it right, especially when we're dealing with modern use of the AR15 M4 platform or M16. And it also means things like batteries, Allen wrenches. A lot of the Picatinny rail things require hex wrenches, so you always want to have a little hex wrench thing with you on set for making adjustments. If you need to be able to have that light, those batteries, the lights working, the tack lights, means carrying a bunch of extra CR123A batteries because you're going to burn through those. Some things use AA batteries. The LED ones use a little less battery, so those will last longer for you. But when you're storing it, you got to pull the batteries back out as well, or else they burn through and sometimes leak, which can ruin your electronics. If we need to see your scopes, those also probably have batteries. We can take better care of those because they're a little more fragile than the rest of the prop, usually, depending on what your prop is. I mean, if you've got an old like MGC model gun, those things are going to be even more fragile. So between military and civilian use, this is just a ridiculously common platform now, and you really need to know how to handle it and how to equip it if you're going to be doing this prop stuff. So just remember, know how to pick the right type. You've got a slings, you've got, if you've got a flat top, you got to get some kind of optics on there. And other accessories, picking the right magazine, foregrips. You got a lot of options. Just make sure that you're being intentional about them and always be safe, look good. See you next time.